Hi, time for a November wrap up. I'm in a new corner, mainly because where I usually sit, we have a big window, and our neighbors are having their house painted, and the sun is like reflecting off the painter's truck, so it's blinding me. So I don't know if I'm going to stay here forever, but I do like it. I've been redoing this corner of my living room, and I bought some art to hang up here, but I'm still waiting for my husband to paint the walls white in here, so I'm not going to hang anything up. I got this new chair that's very comfy, and my kids actually sit in here all the time to read, so it is like a little reading chair. And yeah, okay, on to the books. I'm going to call it November was my hardest reading month of the year. Not worse, because I did read some good books, but it was the hardest month for me to read for the following reasons. So first I did Nano, and I was successful at Nano. So I wrote 50,000 words in November, which cuts into a lot of my reading time. The second reason it was a hard reading month is that at the beginning of the month, I read a book that gave me the worst book hangover. Like, it was so sad. I cried for 5 days. I'm not exaggerating. I'll tell you in a minute which book it was. But it kind of just destroyed me for other books for over a week. I tried to read other stuff, but nothing could grab me. And then lastly, I've been reading some books that are kind of slow, which I'm just not really into reading slow books right now. I've gotten so into thrillers. I've always been into romance. I like fast-paced fantasy. I like fast-paced contemporary fiction and historical fiction. I'm just not a slow-paced reader anymore. And so that also got me. December, you better be a better month. And I know you will be, because I've got a ton of romance novels. I've got some new things coming from Book of the Month I'm excited to read, and I know I won't get stuck in any more ruts. Hopefully nothing will break my heart. So this month I read 3 graphic novels. I read 1 fantasy novella, 1 thriller, and 1 paranormal romance. So not that much, lengthwise. I also am going to talk about 1 book I've decided to DNF, and 1 book that I am more than halfway done with, but just couldn't get finished this week. So it'll be finished in December. Okay, we're going to start with graphic novels, and we are going to start with volumes 8 and 9 of SAGA. And this is going to be a little spoilery, so if you are reading SAGA and don't want to know what happens in these, I'm going to put chapters, jump ahead. Okay, volume 8 of SAGA. I absolutely loved this. I thought it was fantastic. It's got a great plot line with, I'm just going to talk like you've read these, because if you're not doing the spoiler, you've probably read them. Alana has miscarried a baby, and basically the whole plot of this book is about her trying to get basically a DNC so she doesn't die of sepsis. And I really liked this. You get a lot of family between Alana, Marco, and Hazel in here. You get they're building their found family even more. It was a great read. I loved it. Okay, so now let's talk about volume 8. This is the book that broke my heart so badly that I did cry for 5 days. 5 days after I finished it, I got into the shower and burst into tears thinking about it. And this is the huge spoiler, but Marco dies. So Marco was my favorite character. And I really thought, at the beginning of the series, I thought that Alana and Marco were both going to die. And I thought, they were going to die early in the series. But as we've gotten further and further along and they weren't, I thought maybe the 3 of them were going to survive and be able to be a family. And I think part of the reason I got so upset is because I had sort of talked myself into the fact that they were all going to make it out alive of this. I'm going to be really honest. I found this so upsetting that I Googled interviews with the authors, and it's Brian Vaughn and Fiona Staples does the illustrations, but Brian Vaughn writes it. So they really stress in the interviews that it's Hazel's story, and it's not anybody else's story, which started to make me feel this might be a story where everyone around her dies. There were 2 other major character deaths in this book as well that were very sad for me, but not cry for 5 days sad. So I don't think I'm going to finish SAGA. I thought about reading volume 10, but then I thought I finally feel I'm over this. I am a very emotional reader, and I don't think I want to be a part. I don't think I want to make myself feel that sad anymore. I am someone that I can read like sad books, but they very much affect me for a long period of time. And I get really, really emotionally invested and really, really sad. And I don't think I want to read. I like Googled to see what volume 10 is about. And it said it's like about dealing with your grief. And I don't think I want to read that, which makes me very sad because I really loved this series, but I think I might be done with it. So I call them both great. They're both fantastic, but so sad that I don't think I can go on. Okay. Spoilers over. The next graphic novel that I read was Lore Olympus Volume 3, and this was great, and this was not sad at all. It was fantastic. I love these books. They're like age gap romances with like Greek mythology vibes, but not like hardcore Greek mythology, kind of like Greek mythology if it's like almost like urban fantasy. And you've got Hades, who's like thousands of years old, and Persephone, who's just turned 19, and they have crushes on each other. This is an extremely slow burn. Okay, extremely slow burn. I finished volume 3 and they have not kissed. So keep that in mind when reading, that this is not going to be something in which you get like instant gratification in the relationship. I also really liked the friendship between Eros and Persephone in this. It was beautiful. The pictures in this are just so pretty. It's like hard not to fall in love with it. And I read this, I think I finished it one night and then I started it one night and I finished it the next morning. They're very fast. They're very beautiful. They are so much fun. Can't wait for volume 4. Moving away from graphic novels, I read Into the Riverlands by Nevo, which is a fantasy novella. It's the 3rd book in the Singing Hills trilogy. That trilogy follows Chi, who's like a non-binary traveling monk, and their job is to collect stories from different people on the road. So in this one, Chi is in the Riverlands, obviously, and there are like almost fabled martial artists who like live in the woods. / are they ghosts? Are they haunting the woods? So the stories are mainly about this area and this group of people that Chi kind of like joins their group, and they're traveling down this dangerous road together. And so Chi collects their stories, but they're also, as a group, talking about these fabled martial artists. I have to be honest, I was slightly disappointed in this. The first book in the series, The Empress of Salt and Fortune, I loved that book so much. It was one of my best books of 2021, I think is when I read it. It was fantastic. And then the second book, When the Tigers Came Down the Mountain, was great. I really liked that one a lot. This I put more like a solid read. I didn't dislike it. I read it very quickly still. It's very short. I think it's like 150 pages. No, it's 98 pages. It's very short. But it wasn't like the same sort of like grabbing me and couldn't put it down feeling as I had with the other two. Next, I read one thriller, and it was The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. I read The Broken Girls a couple months ago by Simone St. James. Actually, I might have read that in October, and I loved it so much that I got this as an add-on from Book of the Month, and it didn't disappoint. I would say it's great. So in this book, we have a dual timeline, and we have 2 narrators. So our first narrator is Shay, and Shay runs a true crime website, but she's also has survived an attempted kidnapping as a child. So she has a lot of anxieties that I thought Simone St. James did a great job sort of like diving into why she has certain anxieties. But she is obsessed with true crime, and she's always sort of like researching different crimes. Our other narrator is Beth Greer. So her timeline is in the 70s. Shay's is modern day. It's like 2014 or 2017, I can't remember. And in the 70s, Beth was accused of being a serial killer, but she was acquitted. So she went to trial. There was like enough evidence for her to go to trial, but not enough evidence to convict her. And Beth never does interviews, but she agrees to do an interview with Shay. And there's a heavy dose of the supernatural in this. So if you don't like supernatural elements in your thrillers, this isn't for you, because you have to really like believe in different supernatural elements. I don't want to give anything away. But Shay begins to interview Beth at her childhood home, which is where Beth still lives. And like that house has some stuff going on in it. I really liked this. It was a very fast read. It like flew through. I flew through it. It was one of the Goodreads nominations for Best Thriller of 2022, and I did vote for it. I hadn't read all of the thrillers, but I had read, I think, more than half, and so I felt like good about voting for it. Sometimes I feel bad if I've only read one book and then I still vote for it, but I do that sometimes if it's a book that was phenomenal. But so I hope this wins Best Thriller of 2022 because it was great, and I really like Simone St. James. I'll definitely buy her next book. And the only romance I read this month was Resting Witch Face by Juliet Cross. This is the 5th book in the Stay a Spell series, in which we follow the Savoy sisters meeting their soulmates. So this book is about Jules, who is the oldest sister, and Reuben, who is a very powerful vampire. Jules is like the head of the supernaturals in New Orleans. She's an extremely powerful witch, and she has the power to like take people's powers away. So she's called a siphon. So basically, like, she's kind of like a judge. Like, if people do something wrong and they deserve to have their powers taken away, it's her job to do it. This is a second chance romance. So we've seen Reuben throughout the other books because they used to date like 10 years ago. The book opens 10 years ago and you see like how intense their relationship was, which it was very intense and very hot. But then there is something that happens with Jules being the new leader of New Orleans and Reuben not really trusting her judgment and not like keeping her in the loop in some vampire stuff that's going on. So they do break up. Fast forward to present day, Isadora, who's one of Jules' sister, is marrying Devraj, who's Reuben's best friend, and at the wedding, they sort of reconnect. Now, the first half of this book is a little slow because there's a lot of like random logistical stuff going on with like the supernatural community in the United States and then in England. Jules and Reuben are trying to get different communities to sort of accept werewolves because they've always been on the outskirts, and 2 of Jules' sisters are married to werewolves now, and they have figured out a bunch of stuff that's like a lot of plot from the other 4 books. So that part of the book, I was a little like, this is kind of slow. What's going on? But then the second half of the book is extremely exciting and extremely hot. Definitely worth the read. I definitely enjoyed it. I'd put it at a great rating. I think I gave it like 4.25 stars, maybe 4.5. So I did really like it. In the series, I would say it's not one of my favorites, but I think that's probably because personally, I like werewolves better than vampires. And then there's some Grimm characters in this series as well, and I really like the Grimms. So the vampires just don't do it for me. So those are all the books I've read. Let's talk about the books I haven't finished yet. The first one is The Wilder Women by Ruth Emmy Lang. And this is a magical realism book about a pair of sisters who have like gifts. One is psychic, one can like read memories, and they are on a road trip looking for their mom who disappeared. I think it's like 5 years earlier. It's been a while. This is a very slow book, but it's not a bad book. It's just kind of like one of those books in which you're on this journey with the characters and not that much is happening. It's very like desert vibes. If you love the American Southwest, read this book because like right now they did just get to the Pacific Northwest where I am in the book, so maybe it's going to change, but the first half of the book is like very, very desert. Like reminds me of what I had thought in my mind Santa Fe was going to be like, but Santa Fe actually wasn't like I pictured it to be. So I'm going to finish this book. It's just taking me a while. I'll be honest, I'm reading like 1 or 2 chapters a day. I'm kind of slogging through it, but I think I'm going to rate it a solid read. Like, I don't think I'm going to rate it okay. I'm going to finish it. So, yeah, it's just kind of slow. And then lastly, the book I decided to not finish this month is Spear by Nicola Griffith, which stinks because also I'm on page 80 and it's 165 pages. So I'm almost halfway done. But here's the thing. This book looked on paper like something I was going to absolutely love. It's an Arthurian legend retelling. It has a queer protagonist. It's, magic in the woods. This book is really, really not for me. It just, to me, reads very boring, very slow. I don't care what's going on. I don't care about any of the characters. So finally, I was in the middle of the month. This is the book I picked up after Saga because I was like, I'll just read a quick novella and I'll burn through it, and then I'll get over my book hangover, and this was totally the wrong book for me to read. So I read a couple chapters and then was like, hey, I don't want to read this book. And then I read the Book of Cold Cases. That helped a little bit, but I kept trying to come back to this book, and it just wasn't working for me at all. Maybe it worked for you. Maybe you loved it. I hope you did, because I really did have high hopes for it. So I hope there are people out there who really enjoyed it. But me personally, I'm going to return to the library this afternoon. And those are my November reads and my November almost reads. So obviously a low month. November's always a low month. I look forward to December being filled with books I love. Fingers crossed. And if you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for sticking around. Drop me an orange heart in the comments, because I don't know, for some reason the orange heart always makes me think of Thanksgiving. I don't know why. And Thanksgiving just happened here in America. As always, I hope that right now you are in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a great book. I'll see you soon.